Hey everybody, Rob Maurer here, and today we've got some pretty interesting new data on the Tesla Semi. We've also got updates on Giga Mexico, China, and a few other items as well. Not quite as fun of a day for Tesla stock today, finishing down 2.2% after yesterday's up 10% performance, today closing at $267.48, while the Nasdaq was down 1% on the day. Of course, today is the day that the Walter Isaacson Elon Musk biography has been published. I'm definitely still working my way through it, but we'll see. I'm sure we're going to continue to hear more about that throughout the week. Elon did also appear as a guest at the All In Podcast Summit. I don't think there was too much in here Tesla related. I haven't listened to the entire interview yet, but the timestamps definitely make it seem a little bit more general. I did see that Elon had some more positive comments about the trend, at least, for ad revenue for X or Twitter. I think that's always welcome news, as the more stable that X is, the less risk there is of Elon having to further support that financially through the share of possibly Tesla shares. All right, so getting into Tesla updates, I want to start off with the Tesla Semi. We've talked before about the Run on Less event, which is an event that takes a really close look at trucking fleets and their efficiency to hopefully help improve these numbers over time. So the exciting thing is that this is the first year that Tesla Semis are participating in this event through Pepsi. And the first day of data for the trucks that are being tracked has now been published. We're actually going to get many more days of this type of data. But what we've got already is very interesting. So they basically track the trucks, they track their state of charge, how far they've traveled, the speed that they're traveling at, the external temperature. Unfortunately, from the dashboard here, it doesn't look like we get information on elevation or cargo weight. I'm sure the event has those things and maybe we'll see them published in the future. But still a nice collection of pretty precise data that we get to review here. So again, there are 3 trucks from Tesla that are participating in this right now. I will link to this dashboard so people can go and review this data on their own, but let's take a look at truck number 3 because this is the truck that put on the most miles on day 1. It's actually over 500 miles. However, that is with a stop to charge. So looking at kind of the breakdown of vehicle state of energy and the distance traveled, they started off this vehicle with 94.83% state of charge. I'm not sure where they're getting that from exactly, but because this is a fleet vehicle for Tesla, they probably give more information on these things to their customers. So I would guess this is pretty accurate, but there is always a chance that this could be a percentage of a max charge that Pepsi sets. Maybe that's 90% of the actual capacity or something like that, since they may want to prevent charging up to 100%. I don't think it's likely, but it's a possibility. And even if not, then there could still be some buffer beyond this. So just take that into account. But anyway, starts at 94.83%. Then over the course of a trip goes down all the way to 1.7%. Now that trip was 377 miles according to this data. We can then extrapolate that for what it would be to go from 100% to 0%, and in these conditions, that extrapolates to 405 miles of range. So obviously that's a good number, maybe not the 500 miles that Tesla has talked about, but again, we don't know all of the conditions here, we don't know the payload, we don't know the elevation change. It does give us some interesting temperature data, so temperature ranged from 94 degrees Fahrenheit to 66 degrees Fahrenheit, so pretty wide range. We don't know the average over this. We do know the speed though, so for this leg of the trip, speed looks like it was probably pretty close to 65 miles per hour for the majority of the trip. So again, missing some key data that would help us draw a better conclusion, specifically that elevation. We have seen Tesla do the 500-mile trip in the Semi. I think this helps validate that, but only to an extent. It would be nice if this was extrapolating closer to that 500-mile range. For the other 2 trucks, those extrapolated, doing the same kind of math on the graphs that we're seeing, to 402 miles for truck 2 and actually for 434 miles for truck 1, so getting even a little bit closer there with truck 1. Speed is always going to make a big difference here too, so slow that down to 60 miles per hour, 55 miles per hour. That's going to increase that extrapolation pretty significantly. As for charging, we do get some insight on this because we see state of charge and time. I'm sure we'll get more examples of this as more data comes in, but one truck, for example, went from 19% state of charge to 79% state of charge in about 53 minutes. Another truck went from 16% up to 80% in 55 minutes. And about at 80% is when that charging rate seems to start to taper off a bit. There doesn't seem to be much tapering before that, so I would guess that earlier in the state of charge, there's probably more potential here. Hopefully at some point we'll see something like a 5% to 70% that we can take a look at. Anyway, we'll continue to keep an eye on that data as it comes in. And again, the link for those dashboards is in the description. All right, next up we've got a report on Giga Mexico, kind of a hot topic over the last few days. Today's report is that Tesla is actually going to be increasing their investment in Giga Mexico. And these reports come from comments from the governor of Nuevo León, who we often hear from, who said in translation, quote, "The plant that we announced in March, erase it from the map, looks like it will be twice as big." Tesla and suppliers alone are going to generate $15 trillion of investment in 2 years, end quote. So it sounds like he actually said trillion, but it was clarified that meant 15 billion US dollars. And to be clear, that is not just Tesla's investment, but the investment that they expect from Tesla and their suppliers. The report is that this is roughly triple for roughly double the size factory as before, but I would take those figures with a little bit of a grain of salt. People could be comparing different phases of the factory versus the total factory, could be comparing non-supplier funds versus just Tesla, etc. But directionally, it sounds like the investment plan has increased from these comments. This particular article from El Norte also talks about the timeline, so this is not directly from the governor's comments, but they say that some of the permitting could take 6 months in an optimistic scenario, and then that could lead to even more permitting after that, but I'm not sure if that's inclusive of time that Tesla may have already spent doing those things. And then they say from then, it would take about 36 months to complete based on the information that they have. So I don't know how accurate that is, but they're saying that that could suggest operations starting in 2027. So it sounds like this is kind of a similar report as what Reuters had previously reported. It might be coming from the same sort of source of information. So I don't take it as validation, but again, it seems to be coming up. So in general, it looks like Giga Mexico may be a little bit later, but also maybe a little bit bigger than what was initially planned. Maybe we'll hear a little bit more about that from Tesla, but generally they kind of keep those things a little bit close to the chest. All right, next up we've got another week of China insured vehicle numbers, the week of September 4th through September 10th. This week there were 10,700 vehicles from Tesla registered in China. Not surprising given the changeover that we're seeing in the Model 3, but that does continue the drop that we've seen over the last couple of weeks, down from 11,800 the week prior. This moves the quarter-to-date number through 10 weeks up to 111,700 vehicles. That is just above the quarter-to-date trend for Q2 through 10 weeks, at which point Q2 was at 111,100, so 600 vehicles fewer. Q2 ended very strongly though, ultimately making it just shy of 160,000, so to set another record, Tesla would need to do about 16,000 per week over the next 3 weeks. That looks very unlikely, almost impossible, given that that would need to be accomplished without much of a contribution from Model 3. I'd be surprised if the numbers over the next few weeks are materially higher than kind of where we're at right now, this 10,000 level, especially because the Model 3s that Tesla is producing right now, those are likely destined for Europe. Tesla can send a big batch over to Europe and then keep producing domestically for China and then kind of deliver all of those around the same time. Since we've been talking about this for the whole quarter, hopefully no surprises there. Some other quick news on the updated Model 3. Zhang Wen is reporting on X that the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology has approved Tesla's registration to begin selling this vehicle, although it sounds like that won't actually take effect until a week from today, September 19th. Next up, we've got an article from Automotive News on Tesla registrations and EV registrations in general in the US through July. This data comes from Experian. May not be perfect, but they're saying that EV registrations in that 7-month period were 656,000 vehicles, up 67% year over year. That puts EV market share at just over 7%. They say Tesla had 390,000 registrations in that period, 50% increased year over year, and just about 60% of the US EV market share. Of that, they say 236,000 Model Y, that's more than double last year, and 131,000 Model 3, a 21% increase. For Model S and Model X, they say that Model S fell 51%. You've got a number of things there: tax credits, lower prices for 3 and Y, international exports, and of course, high interest rates. So we've seen Tesla react to that now. We'll see how that changes with the lower prices. All the same things affecting Model X, but Model X dropping 14% year over year according to this data. Next is a quick update on supercharging. Tesla today announcing that they have crossed 50,000 superchargers installed worldwide. It's a huge milestone, a decade-long effort for Tesla, but also very interestingly, about half of those superchargers have been installed just within the last 2 years. So pretty crazy to think about and exciting to think about where this will be another decade from now. All right, last couple of things for today. Yesterday we had talked about the Robotaxi concept image. It looked like maybe 3-wheel versions of that, maybe 4-wheel versions of that. A good reminder from a listener, though, that Elon actually commented a few years ago on 3-wheel vehicles, saying that he couldn't support those in general because they were not safe enough. So good reminder there. Of course, it's possible that things could have changed over time, and even if not, Tesla obviously could have played around with some of those concepts anyway. Again, no guarantee that we're seeing anything that's close to what Tesla will finalize, but definitely a good reminder for Elon's comments on that topic. Finally, as we head into tomorrow, Ron Barron will be appearing on CNBC. That'll be 2.5 hours before market open, 7 o'clock Eastern time. and usually Tesla is a part of that discussion, so we'll keep an eye on that. And then of course, we've got CPI tomorrow morning as well. That will do it for today though, so as always, thank you for listening. Make sure you're subscribed and signed up for notifications. You can also find me on X at Tesla Podcast, and we'll see you tomorrow for the Wednesday, September 13th episode of Tesla Daily. Thank you.